And I know you have some technical things to talk about in terms of drums and translating like hip hop beats into beats made like on some kind of machine, and translating that to a live kit.
Yeah. Well, I think the last one it's important to talk about because it's pertinent to like what we were trying to achieve at Urban Science, something that I've always been super like gung-ho about since the beginning, like about respecting the genre, you know, and really trying to like decode some of like the myths. I think a lot of like how you had mentioned that there's a lot of people that go through the educational system come from a more traditional background, whether it be jazz or they had a drum teacher, but it was like all they learned was like top 40 or rock.
Right.
There's a problem when you have a fixed notion of what rhythm is if you're approaching like hip hop, because like all the drums from like at the beginning of what we would call like hip hop production, like say if you call like Marley Marl like taking a snare from one record and putting it on another record, like that for me, like the layering of drums, that's like the original like sample based production that really defined what hip hop sound is. Everything else was just like taking notes from all the things that were already happening in the industry, like in New Jack Swing, or you had drum machines and people playing on top of drum machines, but it wasn't like, you know, I mean, it wasn't fine tuned in the way that if you think about how people chop samples now and how drum loops are reworked and refixed and edited, and you have to learn how to translate that in a way that, I mean, I can't imagine how people could read that on a note. Like you could write down a pattern, right? But it's like in the same way that people have argued a lot about like the way that people teach jazz, like, and they'll just write on the top like Duke Ellington swing or something like that. Like, is that a
yeah, there's certain
because
kinds
there's
of stylistic
people
things.
There's people that read and are super cerebral about music, and then there's people that they feel, you know, and the music has to have a healthy dosage of feel with all the insights and intellectual things that happen with that kind of like high level expertise, like when people really hone their craft. But it has to come from feel at the beginning. Like
I agree. Yeah.
You can't come from an intellectual. You can't try and intellectualize that kind of feeling. So you have to learn. You have to make an emotional relationship with music that you love, and especially so if you walk into a cipher and it's like a hip hop cipher and you're like, I'm a drummer. Yeah, sure, I know how to drum. But then you're like, just like showing like you're riffing the whole time. You're not really respecting the code.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, that's also knowing the role, you know. I think we've both talked about this to a certain degree in terms of drummers coming up at Cypher who say they know how to play hip hop, and they clearly don't, you know. Like one of the things you're talking about is how like the origins of a lot of these rhythmic innovations in hip hop are from the fact that it's sample based. And like, for example, I think the whole like swing thing in hip hop, like it just started as a mistake. You know, you had two, like in the sense of you had two samples that didn't exactly line up. Yeah, they didn't exactly line up, and it's like, oh, but that's cool, and I like the way there's
you're not wrong. And there's actually an interesting, you know, Bob Power. You know who that is?
I know famous, the name.
He's a famous mix engineer. Engineer. He did all the Tribe, like all the J Dilla shit. Yeah. J Dilla was super tight, and there's funny anecdotes like when you look up like his history and his relationship with hip hop. Like he's the more like, you know, he's this like lanky, like skinny white dude from like, you know, like long hair and he's like he's like so important in hip hop sound because he was able to translate, like he was the right fit for the genius of like a JD or a Q-Tip coming in and being like, I want to run this through thing and it needs to sound like, you need to make it like it needs to be warmer. The kick needs to be warmer or whatever.
And he could translate that, you know.
And he somehow like he knew without compromising the pocket or without compromising the rawness of it. And there's anecdotes about like people running shit through samples or drum machines, but not knowing how to like truncate or not knowing how to like keep it clean. So then it's got this like overlap. So every say if it's a 4-bar loop, every 4 bars, it just everything just keeps on sliding. But everything on top of it that you're playing on top of it just keeps on sliding off of rhythm. And even like D'Angelo was terrible with drum machines. This is a funny interview that I saw with Questlove talking about how he got a groove out of a mistake. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Questlove is famous for like but learning how to play these like drunken beats or whatever you want to call them, you know, those kinds of things.
And there's a guy named, I don't know if you know this guy, Daru Jones.
I know the name again.
He's a session drummer guy, but he's even reworked his drum kit. He's like physically manipulated his drum kit to better play like hip hop swing. Like his snare is like down. I don't know if you can.
I'm gonna put up an image in a second.
And he's great. He talks like for drummers that are listening in, right? Like,
I clearly have never seen him play. Oh, you know, because that's kind of like a marching band style, like where it's lower. I wonder if that's part of the.
And reason. You can drag, and he drags. You'll see because he's like the drummer for Pete Rock, the mega producer. He has a band called the Soul Brothers, Soul Survivors, and so it's like him DJing with like a live band,
right?
And this guy is fucking pocket like bananas, and the way he swings, like you can just hear like he like incorporates the digital or analog hiccup.
Right.
You can see it, like his whole body shit, like he's killer. And his choice of hi-hat sounds, his choice of cymbals, the way he decides to put in rolls and stuff like that, it's all knocked out at 4/4. Like you got to be super tight. Like throw in all your glitter and glamour if you want, but you got to do it in the right spot, you know. And you also have to learn, you know, like the power of the silences as well in hip hop beats is really huge. To emphasize, you're trying the whole mandate is to emphasize what the guy's rapping about.
Yeah,
you like check out my triplets, check out my paradiddles.
Yeah. I think that's that's one of those things that a lot of instrumentalists have difficulty with because they're coming at hip hop from the point of view of having learned, you know, an instrument. I don't mean that the turntables or whatever not an instrument, but I'm saying like the way a producer approaches using the drums is completely different from the way a drummer approaches using the drums. You know, and so if you're a drummer, you have to think more like a producer, and you have to be like, oh, I don't have to do a roll into a hit. I can just stop playing and then play the hit, and can be very impactful. In fact, more impactful. You know,
I just pull out on that for that.
That's it.
That half a bar, and then come back in on the crack. You know, like come back or play on the downbeat, or like all these little things that you start picking up. But the first part of it is you have to learn how to just play in the pocket and just stay with it. Like, don't get distracted. Yeah. No matter how pretty the girl is that's looking at you, like, wow, you're such a great guy. Don't start riffing on the hi-hat.
Right.
Take it easy on the tom-toms.
So, you know, we're talking a lot about instrumentalists, but do you have any advice for some of the MCs and stuff like that come up at the Cypher?
Same thing, like there's fundamentals that you have to know.